I was reading a little part of your book, and you talk about you get into some of the correlation between gamma brainwaves and, of course, the mystical experience. But you also get into a little bit about some of the paranormal experiences and abilities that can come with these altered brain states, these heightened state of
Hmm.
beings. And I just found that fascinating. And I wanted to ask you, because gamma brainwaves are that's something that has come up in more than one podcast, and something that's had remarkable change in my life. Becoming a meditator and having a daily practice, and using what many of the gurus today are teaching, to get to a place of that would normally take many years in a cave in the dark, maybe. uh,
Yeah.
so and it's remarkable, and you learn to get a sense of it. And I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm sure you have seen, when you get hooked up to an EEG, the skull map, and you enter into these states. Dr. Joe Dispenza has some wonderful books filled with science, of measurements. He's taken thousands of his students, and I was one of the many people who had wore the skull map and got their brainwaves mapped. And you see this amazing thing happen when someone goes into high gamma, through theta into gamma. And it's amazing because you gamma is the highest, right? And you got to get through beta, but the way into gamma is through the you kind of skip over beta. I mean, you have to go through it, but beta is, right now you're listening to me in probably a very low beta. That's for our listeners so they understand. If somebody was to start banging on your door right now, you would go into a higher beta. And that's people who work these high stress jobs stay in prolonged states of high beta, which is not healthy for the body at all. But I always found it amazing to watch. You can see when they go into that gamma brainwave, the whole brain lights up like the Rockefeller Christmas tree. It's and it's communicating with itself in a way that you just don't see in conscious life most of the time. I mean, so I just found it remarkable that you mentioned that in your book, and I wanted to pick your brain a little more about that.
Proper communication of the mysticism is to actually delve into the non-mystical things like aha moments. Is there a neurological correlation with something like an aha moment, a moment of insight? We've all experienced that. People experience that multiple times a day, I hope. And what it seems like from the research on things like aha moments, moments of insight, it does correlate with just a very brief spike in gamma. So
Hmm.
it is actually something measurable that correlates with that. And then I also came across information indicating that the psychedelic experience, at least the serotonergic psychedelics, ayahuasca, psilocybin, LSD, they all induce a higher gamma as well. And I thought that that was a very interesting note, even though the aha moment is just a blip,
Hmm.
did correlate with a thought that entered the mind. And then you have things like the psychedelic experience where you have, maybe for DMT it's short, but for LSD and ayahuasca, you're talking about hours of gamma
Yeah.
leading to these like profound insights about life and
Hmm.
maybe one's experiences and all that. So, one can make a case that, uh, the aha moments that we experience, in our normal waking consciousness to a certain extent, that maybe there is some sort of overlap with the psychedelic experience, and maybe it has to do with our own endogenous psychedelics.
Yeah.
And because there was a certain amount of consistency, not just with aha moments, but also things like lucid dreaming, even regular dreaming. We're talking about REM sleep cycle, things like meditation. We saw, high gamma in all forms of meditation, not just one type.
Hmm.
Even things like hypnosis, the trance state. And then it's interesting that you describe this whole thing of, dropping into theta and then bouncing up to gamma, because I thought that was extremely interesting in the sense that uh, we get into a relaxative state,
Mhm.
to reach the higher states, where rather than just like revving a car up, just redlining, it's almost like, we're bypassing that in some sort of manner.
Yeah.
And, from my other research too, it's interesting because you actually can go straight into a high stress state and do gamma as well. I mean,
Mm.
concepts like, soldiers on the battlefield having out of body experiences,
Hmm.
not going into theta and then gamma, they're revving up straight through beta and going, straight into high gamma, having those experiences. So there's multiple pathways to a same experience. Like you can have, I've seen there's studies where you can have like an out of body experience via hypnosis. So hypnosis
Hmm.
very relaxative. Then, I'm hypothesizing that most likely you're going into a gamma state from that hypnotic state. But, at the same time, you have soldiers on the battlefield having similar experiences. So there's multiple pathways to the same sort of experience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It totally makes sense. And it just reminds me of that old, you always hear the story of the woman whose daughter, or she's fixing a tire, and the young baby or the daughter ends up under the car, and without a single thought in that moment, she just picks the car up and removes her
Yeah.
daughter. And if you asked her to do it again, she'd look at you like you were crazy, because she has no idea how she does it, or how she did it. And
Yeah.
we all have moments where we have no idea how we did something, where we enter into this state many times without a thought, and just do something that's remarkable, that later on we think, I wonder how I caught that, or how I did that. I without a thought we do it. I feel like those moments, I would love to be, have an EEG set up and be testing the levels or during those moments, because I'm pretty sure, I imagine that there's a spike there that goes into gamma, and that you see some crazy coordination and communication going on in the mind that is not exactly typical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people consider that the flow state. I mean,
Hmm.
talk about it all the time, right? When Michael Jordan was in the zone, he was like, I'm just in that flow. It's not like I'm thinking.
Right.